Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert M. Sapolsky. Picture yourself as a zebra for just a moment, calmly munching grass on the endless golden African savanna. Life is pretty simple. Your biggest concern is finding the next delicious patch to graze on. Then, without warning, you catch a glimpse of gold in your peripheral vision, a lion. Everything changes in an instant. Your body launches into overdrive. A tidal wave of hormones surges through your system. Your heart pounds like thunder, pushing fuel to every muscle. Your breathing turns quick and shallow, desperately gulping oxygen. Everything non-essential just shuts off. Digestion, on hold. Growth can wait. Your immune system, not a priority right now. In this single moment, only one thing matters: survival. You've become a living, breathing miracle of evolution, a finely tuned escape artist with one job: run like your life depends on it. And you do run. You sprint, you weave, you escape. A few heart-pounding minutes later, the danger passes. And here's the truly remarkable part: you just reset. The hormone storm calms. Your heart settles back to its normal rhythm. You return to grazing, mind peacefully focused on that next tuft of grass. Crisis over. For a zebra, stress is pure and simple, a brief, intense moment of life or death urgency. Now picture yourself as a human. You're trapped in your car, boxed in by endless traffic. You're going to be late to that meeting. Your boss is probably going to give you that look. Your mind starts racing. The mortgage payment, that tense conversation with your partner this morning, that weird rattle your car's been making. And what's your body doing while you sit there? Exactly what the zebra's body was doing. That same ancient survival response kicks in. The same hormones flood your bloodstream. Your heart rate climbs. Your blood pressure spikes. The only problem? There's no lion. There's no sprint to freedom. You're just sitting there, marinating in a chemical cocktail that was meant for a 3-minute sprint. And you don't experience it for just 3 minutes. You experience it for the entire 30-minute traffic jam. You experience it again when your boss gives you that look. You experience it for weeks while stressing about that looming deadline. This is the fascinating, eye-opening question at the heart of Robert M. Sapolsky's brilliant book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Written by a Stanford neuroscientist and primatologist, this isn't just another health book. It's a window into understanding ourselves. It has sold millions of copies and fundamentally changed how we think about the connection between our minds and our bodies. Sapolsky poses a deceptively simple question with a surprisingly deep answer. Why do we, living in our modern, relatively comfortable world, suffer from an epidemic of diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and ulcers, while wild animals facing genuine life-or-death threats every day somehow don't? The answer is what I'm about to share with you. By the time we finish, you'll understand the hidden language your body speaks when responding to the world around you. You'll discover how your thoughts and emotions can directly influence virtually every cell in your body. And most crucially, you'll learn why some people crumble under stress while others seem to flourish, and what you can do to join that second group. This isn't just about managing stress. It's about understanding your own biological blueprint and learning to stop making your mind your body's greatest enemy. Let's dive into one of the most important books you might ever encounter. To really appreciate what Sapolsky is teaching us, we need to start with a concept you probably learned in school and then forgot: homeostasis. It's actually quite beautiful. Our bodies have an ideal state, a perfect temperature, perfect blood sugar level, perfect pH balance. When something pushes us out of that sweet spot, our body works to bring us back. Too hot? You sweat. Blood sugar drops? You get hungry. Homeostasis is simply about maintaining balance. When a zebra runs from a lion, it's violently knocked out of homeostatic balance. The body's response, that hormone flood, that racing heart, is what Sapolsky calls the stress response. It's the body's way of re-establishing balance and surviving the crisis. For most creatures on Earth, Stress means a short, intense physical crisis. Afterward, you're either safe or you're dinner. But we humans possess a unique and rather unfortunate talent. We can trigger that exact same life-or-death stress response just by thinking. As Sapolsky puts it, we're smart enough to generate all kinds of stressful events purely in our heads. How many zebras lie awake worrying about their retirement savings or rehearsing what they'll say on a first date? This is the heart of our problem. Our bodies are brilliantly designed for handling short-term physical emergencies, but they become potential disasters when constantly activated for purely psychological reasons. When we sit around worrying, we're switching on a system built to help us outrun predators, but we're leaving it running for months on end over mortgages, relationships, and job promotions. This is the book's central theme, the idea we'll keep returning to. We constantly activate a system that evolved for responding to acute physical emergencies, but we turn it on for months at a time, worrying about things that would make absolutely no sense to a zebra. So what exactly is this system? What makes up the machinery of the stress response? It starts in your brain, specifically with a part of your nervous system you don't consciously control, the autonomic nervous system. This system has two opposing branches, like a gas pedal and brake for your body. The brake is the parasympathetic nervous system. It handles all the calm, quiet activities of daily life. When you're relaxing after a good meal, feeling pleasantly drowsy, that's your parasympathetic system at work, helping you store energy and grow. It's the rest and digest system. The gas pedal is the sympathetic nervous system. This kicks into high gear during what Sapolsky amusingly calls the 4 F's: flight, fight, fright, and, well, sex. When you're startled, thrilled, or terrified, this system floods your body with two critical messengers, epinephrine and norepinephrine, better known as adrenaline and noradrenaline. Within seconds of perceiving a threat, whether real or imagined, these chemicals trigger your pounding heart, churning stomach, and prepare your body for intense action. That's the lightning-fast response. But there's another, slightly slower and more sustained component. This is the hormonal cascade. It also begins in the brain, in a region called the hypothalamus. When stressed, your hypothalamus releases a hormone called CRH. This travels a short distance to your pituitary gland, signaling it to release ACTH. ACTH then flows through your bloodstream to your adrenal glands, sitting atop your kidneys. And here's where the second star of the stress show appears: glucocorticoids, a class of steroid hormones. In humans, the primary one is cortisol. Adrenaline provides that explosive energy for the first seconds of crisis. Glucocorticoids sustain the response over minutes or hours. Together, adrenaline and glucocorticoids are the workhorses of your stress response. What do they actually do? Their main job is mobilizing energy. When you're running for your life, your muscles need fuel immediately. There's no time to digest your last meal. So these hormones act like urgent bank tellers, liquidating your body's assets. They pull stored energy, simple sugars like glucose and fats, from your liver, muscles, and fat cells, dumping them into your bloodstream for delivery to the muscles that need them. Simultaneously, your heart rate and blood pressure skyrocket to deliver that fuel as quickly as possible. And to ensure all this energy goes where it's needed most, your body shuts down all long-term, optimistic projects. Digestion stops. Growth halts. Your reproductive system goes offline. If a lion's chasing you, it's definitely not the time to worry about ovulating or producing sperm. Even your immune system gets suppressed. The logic seems to be, worry about fighting infections later. Right now, survive the next 5 minutes. For an acute emergency, this system is brilliant and life-saving. But here's where trouble begins. What happens when this system runs constantly? What happens when every day feels like an emergency? Sapolsky uses a wonderful metaphor, the two elephants on a seesaw model. Imagine two small kids balancing on a seesaw. That's your body in a calm, balanced state, what scientists call allostasis. The low levels of stress hormones are easy to manage. Now imagine trying to balance that same seesaw with two massive elephants. It's technically possible, but at enormous cost. The elephants burn tremendous energy just staying balanced, energy that could be used for better things. They also wear out the seesaw much faster. This is what chronic stress does. Your body constantly spends energy just maintaining a precarious balance, and the systems themselves start wearing down under the immense load. This wear and tear is what Sapolsky calls allostatic load. It's not that the stress response runs out of fuel. It's that the response itself, when chronically activated, becomes more damaging than whatever it's trying to protect you from. And this is key to understanding a vast range of modern diseases. Let's tour your body and see what happens when the elephants stay on that seesaw too long. We'll start with your cardiovascular system. During an emergency, blood pressure rises to pump fuel to your muscles. That's adaptive. But if your blood pressure spikes to 180/100 every time you get an annoying email, you're heading for disaster. Chronic hypertension is just the beginning. To handle that constant pressure, your blood vessel walls work harder, building up thicker muscle. But this makes them more rigid, which further increases blood pressure. It's a vicious cycle. Your heart suffers too. With blood returning with more force, the wall of your left ventricle, the part pumping blood to your body, thickens. This is called left ventricular hypertrophy, and it's the single best predictor of cardiac risk. Meanwhile, those high-pressure torrents of blood start damaging the smooth inner lining of your arteries, especially where they branch. Think of a river fork where water churns most violently. These tiny tears create an inflammatory response. Fatty nutrients, cholesterol, and other circulating debris stick to these damaged sites, forming atherosclerotic plaques. Stress helps build these plaques, both by damaging vessel walls and by dumping more fat and bad LDL cholesterol into the bloodstream. If a plaque grows large enough, it can block an artery. If it tears loose, it can travel to a smaller vessel and completely clog it. When that happens in an artery feeding your heart, you have a heart attack. In the brain, a stroke. This explains why stress is a major contributor to heart disease, the #1 killer in the developed world. It's not some vague psychological concept. It's a direct mechanical process of wear and tear. Now let's look at energy. We've seen that the stress response mobilizes energy. But if you're constantly mobilizing energy instead of storing it, you're always running on empty. You'll fatigue more easily. And there's a deeper problem. All that glucose and fat floating in your bloodstream needs to be stored away eventually. Insulin is the hormone that does this. But during stress, glucocorticoids make your cells less sensitive to insulin. They're essentially telling your cells, don't store this energy. We need it available now. If this happens chronically, your cells can become permanently less responsive to insulin. This is called insulin resistance. Your pancreas must pump out more and more insulin to get the job done. This is the pathway to type 2 diabetes, a disease reaching epidemic proportions in our modern world. Sapolsky points out this isn't a normal feature of aging. It's a disease of inactivity and excess fat, conditions increasingly common in our society. This combination of high blood pressure, elevated blood sugar and insulin, and too much bad cholesterol is so common it has a name, metabolic syndrome or Syndrome X. It's a perfect storm of stress-related problems, a clear sign those elephants have been on the seesaw far too long. What about your digestive system? When running from a lion, the last thing your body wants is wasting energy on digestion, so it shuts down. Saliva stops flowing, your mouth gets dry, stomach contractions halt, blood flow diverts away from your gut. This is fine for a short sprint, but with chronic stress? This brings us to the book's titular question, ulcers. For decades, ulcers were the poster child for stress-related disease. The story seemed simple. You worry a lot, your stomach churns out acid, and you burn a hole in your stomach lining. Then, in the 1980s, 2 Australian scientists discovered a bacterium called Helicobacter pylori and showed it was present in the vast majority of ulcer patients. The medical world completely reversed course. Ulcers weren't caused by stress. They were caused by a bug. The stress idea got dismissed as unscientific, psychosomatic nonsense. But as Sapolsky masterfully explains, the story is more complex. The bacterium can't be the whole story. Why? Because only about 10% of people infected with H. pylori actually get ulcers. Something else must be involved. That something else is stress. Turns out stress doesn't cause ulcers by increasing acid. In fact, during a stressor, acid secretion actually decreases as digestion shuts down. The damage happens more subtly. The stomach constantly protects itself from its own acid with a thick mucus layer and other defenses. During chronic stress, the body cuts back on these expensive defense and repair projects. Then, when the stress passes and digestion rebounds, the stomach's defenses are down. It's like firing up a furnace with weakened firewalls. Stress, combined with H. pylori bacteria, creates perfect conditions for ulcers to form. The bacteria might load the gun, but stress often pulls the trigger. Stress also plays a major role in another common gut problem, irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS. While stress shuts down the stomach and small intestine, it actually increases contractions in the large intestine. The logic is simple. If you're running for your life, you want to jettison any dead weight. But when this happens chronically, you get a spastic colon, leading to the pain, diarrhea, and bloating of IBS. Let's move on to two other long-term projects that stress puts on hold: growth and reproduction. Growing takes enormous energy. So during a crisis, growth is one of the first things to go. This is why children experiencing extreme, prolonged psychological trauma, severe abuse, or neglect can literally stop growing. This rare but devastating condition is called stress dwarfism, or psychosocial dwarfism. These children aren't malnourished. Their bodies simply shut down the hormones needed for growth. The stories Sapolsky tells are heartbreaking, like that of famous author J.M. Barrie, who created Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up. Barrie himself stopped growing after his older brother's traumatic death, in a tragic, unconscious attempt to please his grieving mother, who wished her dead son could have remained a boy forever. These extreme cases show how profoundly our emotional state can dictate our physical development. Reproduction is another optimistic, energy-intensive project that gets shut down by stress. In both men and women, the cascade of reproductive hormones gets inhibited. Glucocorticoids block the testes in men and ovaries in women from responding properly to their hormonal signals. In men, testosterone levels drop, but the more immediate effect is on erections. An erection requires the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, to be active. You need to be calm and relaxed. If you're anxious or stressed, the sympathetic fight-or-flight system takes over, making erections difficult to achieve or maintain. This is why psychogenic impotency is so common. In women, stress can disrupt the menstrual cycle, making it irregular or stopping it completely. It can also interfere with ovulation and make it harder for a fertilized egg to implant in the uterus. Libido decreases in both sexes. From an evolutionary perspective, this all makes sense. A time of famine or crisis isn't a good time to bring new life into the world. So far, we've seen stress attack your heart, metabolism, gut, growth, and reproductive systems. But what about your immune system? The old, simple story was that stress suppresses immunity. Selye saw this in his original experiments. His stressed rats had shrunken immune tissues. But again, reality is far more nuanced and fascinating. In the first few minutes of a stressor, something surprising happens. Many aspects of your immune system are actually enhanced. Your body rushes immune cells into circulation and sends them to the front lines. Your skin, gut, lungs, places where wounds or infections are most likely during a physical crisis. This is what Sapolsky calls Phase A. It's like your body anticipating injury and beefing up defenses at the borders. If the stressor continues for about an hour, the system shifts, Prolonged exposure to glucocorticoids starts suppressing the immune response, bringing it back to baseline. This is phase B. This is also adaptive. An immune system always on high alert is dangerous. It can start attacking your own body, leading to autoimmune diseases. The glucocorticoids act as a brake, preventing the system from overreacting. But what if the stressor is major and prolonged? Then you enter phase C. The immune system gets suppressed below baseline. This is where chronic stress can increase vulnerability to infectious diseases, like the common cold. It's why latent viruses like herpes tend to flare up when you're run down. The virus is smart. It waits for your immune defenses to weaken before making its move. This three-phase model helps explain a major paradox. Stress hormones like glucocorticoids are used to treat autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis because they suppress the overactive immune system. Yet stress is also known to worsen flare-ups of these same diseases. How can this be? The new model suggests an answer. Massive, prolonged stress or high doses of glucocorticoids push you into phase C, suppressing the autoimmune attack. But frequent, intermittent stressors, the kind repeatedly kicking you into phase A and B, may actually ratchet the immune system upward, making it more likely to overreact and cause a flare-up. Now, what about the most feared disease of all? Cancer. Does stress cause cancer? Sapolsky is extremely careful and clear here. The answer, based on the best scientific evidence, is almost certainly no. While animal studies show stress can accelerate growth of some induced tumors, there's no good evidence from large prospective human studies that stress increases the risk of getting cancer in the first place. What about once someone has cancer? Can stress management or a positive attitude affect survival? This is one of medicine's most controversial topics. A famous study by David Spiegel at Stanford seemed to show that women with metastatic breast cancer who participated in support groups lived, on average, 18 months longer. But subsequent studies have struggled to replicate this finding. Sapolsky issues a powerful warning here against the dangerous idea that if you get cancer, it's somehow your fault for not having the right attitude, and that you can cure yourself with positive thinking. This kind of blame-the-victim mentality, popularized by writers like Bernie Siegel, is not only scientifically unsupported, but can be incredibly cruel and damaging to people facing a devastating illness. Finally, we arrive at the brain itself. How does stress affect our ability to think and remember? Here again we see that familiar double-edged sword. A mild, short-term stressor can actually enhance memory. Think of flashbulb memories. Those vivid, indelible moments, like your first kiss, or where you were on September 11th. The adrenaline released during these arousing events helps sear the memory into your brain, particularly in a key memory structure called the hippocampus. This is adaptive. If something important and arousing happens, you want to remember it. But when stress becomes severe or prolonged, the opposite happens. High, sustained levels of glucocorticoids begin disrupting hippocampus function. They interfere with long-term potentiation, the process by which neural connections strengthen to form memories. Retrieving existing memories becomes harder. This is why you blank out on an exam when panicked or can't remember someone's name at a party. Even more disturbing, Sapolsky's own pioneering research has shown that prolonged, intense exposure to glucocorticoids can actually damage and kill neurons in the hippocampus. In rats, this happens during normal aging, creating a vicious cycle. As the hippocampus degenerates, it becomes less effective at shutting off the glucocorticoid response, which leads to even more glucocorticoids, causing more hippocampal damage. Is there evidence for this in humans? Yes. People with conditions causing massive glucocorticoid excess, like Cushing's syndrome, show both memory problems and a smaller hippocampus. Similar findings have been reported in people with long-term major depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. While the science is still evolving, the implications are chilling. Chronic stress may not just make thinking harder, it may actually damage the parts of our brain responsible for learning and memory. And this brings us to the final, critical piece of the puzzle. We've seen in detail how stress makes us sick. But why are some situations so much more stressful than others? Why do some of us fall apart while others remain resilient? This is where Sapolsky shifts from pure physiology to the psychology of stress, and it's where the keys to managing stress are found. A series of brilliant experiments, many conducted by physiologist J. Weiss, revealed the core psychological ingredients that make a situation stressful. Imagine two rats in separate cages. Both receive the same series of mild, unpredictable electric shocks. The first rat gets an ulcer, the second doesn't. What's the difference? The second rat has a bar of wood it can chew on whenever shocked. It has an outlet for frustration. Or, in another variation, it has another rat it can bite. This is displacement of aggression, a stress reducer we primates are notoriously good at. Another variable. A warning bell sounds just before each shock for one rat, but not the other. The rat with the bell gets fewer ulcers. Why? Predictability. It learns not only when something bad is about to happen, but also, crucially, when it can relax, because nothing bad is happening. Next, a sense of control. A rat that believes it can press a lever to stop the shocks, even if the lever is disconnected, has a much smaller stress response than a rat with no control. It's the belief in control, not actual control, that matters. Another factor is social support. Put a primate through something stressful, and the stress response is smaller if a friend is present. Sapolsky's own research on baboons shows that males with strong social bonds, those who groom females and play with infants, have lower resting glucocorticoid levels. Finally, there's the perception of things worsening. A rat getting 25 shocks an hour feels much better about it if it was getting 50 shocks yesterday. The same external reality can be perceived as good or bad news, and that perception dramatically changes the physiological response. These psychological factors, outlets, predictability, control, social support, and a sense of improvement, are the building blocks of psychological stress. And our personalities are, in many ways, our habitual styles of interpreting the world through these filters. Some personalities are magnets for stress. The Type A personality, competitive, impatient, and hostile, is a classic example. It's not the hard-working nature of Type A people that's the problem. It's the chronic hostility. Hostile people see threats and provocations everywhere. They live in a world constantly demanding a stress response, and their cardiovascular systems pay the price. Anxiety disorders are another example. Anxious people have a hyper-reactive amygdala, the brain's fear center. They overestimate risk and exist in a constant state of vigilance with an overactive sympathetic nervous system. And then there's depression, which Sapolsky presents as the ultimate stress-related disease. It's a state of learned helplessness, born from experiencing uncontrollable stress, where the body's stress response system is profoundly broken. In many depressed people, glucocorticoid levels are chronically elevated, and the brain has lost its ability to shut them off. It's a state of physiological exhaustion from a battle fought entirely within the mind. This finally brings us to the grandest scale of all, society. If psychological factors are so important, what does your place in society have to do with stress? A tremendous amount. Sapolsky argues that if you want to find the human equivalent of a low-ranking baboon, relentlessly stressed by those higher up, look at a poor person in a wealthy society. Poverty isn't just about lacking resources. It's a profound chronic stressor. It comes with a constant lack of control, lack of predictability, fewer outlets, and less social support. The result is a staggering health gradient based on socioeconomic status. On nearly every measure, from heart disease to infant mortality, the lower you are on the socioeconomic ladder, the worse your health. This isn't just about poor versus rich, it's a gradient. At every single step down the ladder, health gets a little worse. This has been shown in countries with universal health care, like Britain, which means it's not just about access to doctors. What is it about then? It's not just about being poor. It's about feeling poor. It's about your subjective rank, how you perceive yourself relative to others. and it's about poverty amid plenty. The greater the income inequality in a society, the worse the average health of its citizens. And this applies to both poor and rich. Why? Because large inequalities erode social trust, increase hostility, and create a more stressful environment for everyone. This is a sobering, powerful message. The architecture of our society can literally get under our skin and shape our health. So after this long journey through the many ways stress can break us down, are we doomed? Is there any hope? Absolutely. And this is where Sapolsky leaves us, not with a simple fix, but with deep wisdom. The incredible message of why zebras don't get ulcers isn't one of despair, but of empowerment. For 17 chapters, Robert Sapolsky takes us on a detailed, often terrifying tour of what can go wrong in our bodies. He shows us how a system designed for survival can, in the modern world, turn against us. But in doing so, he gives us the map. He reveals the mechanisms. And if you understand the mechanism, you can begin to influence it. The most profound lesson in this book, for me, is realizing that we're not built for the world we've built. We're running ancient software on modern hardware, and the result is a system crash. We have the physiology of wild animals, but the psychology of worried, self-aware humans. That mismatch is the source of so much suffering. But knowledge is power. The final chapter is about managing stress, and it's not about finding some magic bullet. It's about applying the psychological principles we've learned. It's about consciously and intentionally building more control, more predictability, more outlets, and more social support into our lives. So, what can you do, starting today, to apply these lessons? It doesn't have to be complicated. First, find a domain of control. Your life might feel overwhelming, full of things you can't change, but find one small corner where you can exert mastery. It could be as simple as organizing your desk, starting a small garden, or mastering a new skill. That feeling of efficacy, of being in charge of something, can be a powerful antidote to the helplessness that fuels so much stress. Second, strengthen your social connections. Don't just network, connect. Reach out to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Make time for family. Sapolsky's baboons teach us a vital lesson: social grooming, playing with the young, having allies. These aren't frivolous activities, they're biological necessities. In our human world, that translates to listening, offering support, and allowing ourselves to be supported. A key insight is that giving support can be one of the most powerful stress reducers of all. Being needed is a profound source of control and purpose. Third, and perhaps most directly, find a physical outlet. The entire problem we've discussed is that we trigger a physical stress response for non-physical reasons. Exercise is the perfect solution. It gives your body the physical release it was preparing for. When you exercise, you're finally giving your body permission to do what it's been screaming to do all along. You're telling it, okay, here's the crisis you've been waiting for. Let's go. It doesn't just reduce tension, it completes the biological cycle. This book is a journey into the intricate and beautiful machinery of our own bodies. Robert Sapolsky is more than just a scientist. He's a master teacher, a storyteller who can explain the most complex ideas with wit, humanity, and profound wisdom. That was a summary of Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky. We've explored the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book yourself. It's in the quiet moments when a particular story or simple phrase hits you in ways you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, grab a copy, because reading it isn't just learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and your daily life. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, I'd be so grateful if you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that these explorations matter and ensures you won't miss our next adventure into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.